Great, thank you very much for having me. Can you guys all hear me okay? Okay, so I think earlier on, Yasavardi had mentioned that this is a social conference. So I noticed that there are a lot of open spaces. So if you're standing, please feel free to sit down or squeeze over to make space. So really quick, so a little bit about myself. I originally started in tech. My career started with the HP. I worked at Apple for several years. My career also started in security, not just technology, but the security around technology. And so I think, in this 15 minutes, I'll give you kind of a snapshot of how Byton kind of became Byton, or what's so special about Byton, what's different about Byton. Okay, so I think when I was at Tesla, one of the things that we were really trying to do is to bring electric vehicles to the world. And I think what the biggest challenge at the time was really to get the OEMs to accept that this technology is viable, that there is a market for this, with the ultimate goal of really to save the world. Okay. And so whenever I look for a company, or whenever I look for a company to go work at and represent, I look for opportunities to change the world. And from my perspective, Byton's one of those companies. So after Tesla, I was looking for something, another one of those opportunities, and I knew that from many trips during my Apple days and my Tesla days to China, that the air quality was very poor, right? So, and I knew that China is going through a heavy industrialization, and that if I wanted to make an effect on the environment, China would be the place to start, right? To make the biggest amount of effect. Okay. So this opportunity came along. At the time, I was at another Chinese car company. I made the move to another Chinese car company called NIO. And I realized that digitalization of the car was what everyone keeps talking about. But what everybody was doing wrong was they were taking a traditional vehicle-like platform, let it be electric or an internal combustion engine, and they were putting digital on top of it. So the effect was you end up with a digital product that was almost like the digital was something you bolted on. It didn't feel seamless. It didn't really feel part of the process. So at Byton, what we're trying to do is we're not only a car manufacturer, but we aim to become an AI-enabled mobility service provider. So from the beginning, we really thought about what future of cars would be like. And the future of cars, our vision is that shared mobility is our future. We'll still have our Porsches and BMWs in our garages, but those would be more weekend cars. Shared mobility where you won't necessarily own a car yourself. You may own a car with a group of people, or you might just call on a Uber-like service to come and bring the car to you. Okay. At Byton, how we envision that is so our product marketing guys came up with all these concepts and said to me, hey, we wanted our car's gonna be electric. We knew it needs to be connected. We knew that there is an autonomous future, right, somewhere along the line. That whole shared mobility concept. We needed some sort of personalization, and it needed to be future-proof. So my team at Byton, with my security background, I stepped out of that role and stepped into an engineering role and took over an engineering group. My team's responsible for much of the in-car vehicle compute, the vehicle cloud, AI machine learning, of course our security lab, which I'll talk a little bit about shortly, and so forth. So we had to come up with an idea of how do you do this? How do you do this very difficult task of building a car that's digital? And so earlier on, the company decided that we're going to build a digital-first platform and then put the car on top of it, much like how Tesla built the electric vehicle platform and bolted a traditional canopy on top. Okay, so, and that's how if you want to build a truly digital car, a car that can become an equal to, let's say, your mobile phone, is you have to look at the digital first. And now what became really difficult very quickly to understand is that for those that aren't in the automotive industry, the automotive industry OEMs are like Mercedes and Benz, just like, Mercedes and Porsche, the Audi, those guys are called OEMs, right? Chrysler, GM, they're all called OEMs. There's this common practice industry where you buy components from what we call tier ones, right? The Bosches, Delphis, and so forth, right? And then you bring all those parts together and you bolt them into a platform, and that's, you do your own design, there's some technology that you add, and then that's how the traditional OEM industry works. To achieve this, we couldn't go down that path. For the powertrain, perhaps that makes sense, right? Electric powertrains are actually becoming quite mature. Those components we will still source from tier ones. In our case, we're using Bosch, right? We've announced that publicly. Now, for the digital side, as we looked around at components and technology available, we found that this stuff just didn't exist. And in those areas, we brought that capability in-house. We had to build what we call our Byton Smart Gateway, which is a smart compute platform. We had to build our own telematic box because the level of connectivity that we wanted didn't exist. If we wanted to, for our level of connectivity, we would have to bolt 8 shark fins on the roof of our cars. And our head of design obviously said no to that, so we had to develop a flat antenna, which is based on aircraft-grade technology. And so that was part of the innovation. The innovation was really sparked by the need to build a platform that was digital first, but just happens to have 4 wheels, using technologies that didn't exist. Okay. So our first car, just a little bit of marketing here. Our first car is the M-Byte, and it's the SUV. This will actually launch first in China at the end of this year, followed by US and Europe in the second half of 2020. Okay. Our second vehicle, the K-Byte, you can't see in this picture, but the K-Byte actually is a design study on embracing autonomous driving technologies. And that's slated for sometime in 2021. And the K-Byte actually, we integrated the technologies around autonomous driving into the body of the design. But the M-Byte, which we launched initially, we showed it off at CES last year, and then we showed the production interior this year, which I'll actually show you a picture of shortly here. Okay. So a little bit about the company. We are currently over 1,500 employees, so we're not a small startup by far anymore. We're located in many locations. Of course, Munich, right, is our European base of operation. We have quite a few employees in Munich and growing very large. So, if you are interested in our company, we welcome you. Okay. Well, of course, we're located in our headquarters in Nanjing, China. The factory is actually near completion. A couple months more to go. I don't think I have any pictures in the slide of where the factory is at. And they built the factory very quickly, which I was pretty amazed by. And of course, we have offices in Shanghai and Beijing and so forth. And of course, our tech center, where I'm located at, is in Silicon Valley, and specifically Santa Clara. And when we have a Future Labs, which works on future concepts, located in LA. Okay. So digital AI ecosystem will offer whole new experiences to the customer. So this is kind of the idea behind it, is that we start off with this concept of what we call Byton Life. Okay. And Byton Life is basically your profile that goes with you, regardless of whether it's an app running on your phone, perhaps this integration with, let's say, a device like Amazon Alexa, or maybe your smartwatch or your computer, and so forth. And it's a single sign-on platform. It's built Byton Life. The back end is, just for those technology geeks, it's container-based. So this way we can spin it up, spin it down, grow quickly, shrink, and so forth. It also is built to pull and push and also integrate with APIs. So any folks out here who could be potential partners, send us an email to experience@byton.com. We have many partners that we have not announced yet, but we welcome if you have an idea and would like to work with us, experience@byton.com. So we start off with this Byton ID concept. And the idea behind the Byton ID is that there's information that we gather about you. And we use AI and machine learning on the back end. We also push AI and machine learning into the edge. So here's another neat part about building your own technology, is that you can actually have the sufficient compute inside the car. A lot of times what happens is that if you don't control the hardware inside the car or the software inside the car, you're forced to place the technology in the cloud, right? Limiting the ability to perform machine learning inside the car, okay? Now, on the security side, this is great because one of the greatest fears as a OEM for myself is if someone takes over the vehicle cloud. And if you take over the vehicle cloud, you can actually potentially take over all the vehicles in the fleet. So by pushing the compute to the edge, you can actually make the cars aware when the cloud's compromised. So the cloud can respond to attacks from its own cloud. Okay. It's a little side note there. Okay, so now the idea behind this shared concept is that when you have a profile, you're in the car and I'm in the car's aware using biometrics that both of us are in the car, and it's able to correlate the information about you and I. So for a simple example would be, let's say, you're in the car, I'm in the car, you like to eat steak, I like to eat seafood. Car knows I like to eat around 6 o'clock, knows that you like to eat at 6:15. We're driving around, it's about 5:45, 5:50. Car pops up a suggestion saying, would you like to go eat at a seafood steak restaurant? Right, so you can do that if you have the profile information. Now, why do we want to do that? It's because what normally happens is you and I are in the car and we might start a discussion about where to go eat. You take out your phone, you look up some restaurant choices, you show it to me, I'm driving, I look down, I'm distracted, right? So the idea and concept behind this philosophy is that we create a seamless experience, reduce distractions in the car, making you a better driver. And then, so what about this part with the other cars, all the other cars in the slide? And it's that now with this, our security lab focus very heavily on a technology application layer V2X stack, vehicle to anything connectivity stack. And this allows us to have some sort of profound social effect of where cars can connect to other cars using, let it be, cellular-based V2X, Wi-Fi-based V2X, or maybe even traditional Wi-Fi to communicate with each other. Okay, so you create this ecosystem of cars and so forth. And on top of that, what we also is this concept, these technologies that we developed for V2X. We're in the process of figuring out how to best open source that technology so that we can give it back to the community and increase adoption. So really quickly about some of our connectivity hardware. At launch, our vehicles on the high end will support upwards of 3 cellular modems. And we did a lot of studies to figure out how to optimize multiple modems and whether it made sense, because I was skeptical at first myself, honestly, but when we saw the results, we actually saw quite a significant improvement in connectivity using multiple modems. But of course, this is available only on our high-end vehicles with some proprietary software and hardware to achieve this. We also have the smart gateway, which is the in-car smart compute, and that's also built in-house. It has a 10 gig backbone. Might not seem a lot for those that work in the data center world, but in the automotive world, especially on an electric vehicle where you have finite power and you have to deal with thermal and vibration issues, 10 gig is actually very difficult to achieve. Okay. And of course, we have our cloud. Now, this is actually the production interior. We announced at CES this year. There's a very large 48-inch display in there, and it's actually very, very cool. And this is actually the actual production interior that's going to affect. Our show car also had the 48-inch display. Now, why is it so big? Okay, there's a couple of reasons. Because you can do video conferencing. You could technically watch movies depending on what region you're in, right? Some regions, of course, you can't watch movies while the car's moving. But why the real estate is that if you have real estate, you have the opportunity to create a UI UX that's not limited by the structure of the space that you have available. So for example, many cars today, if they have a navigation system, the navigation might be displayed in the center console. It might be also displayed in the driver dash, but the content and the information in most cases look different on the dash and the driver. So what happens is that it's a distraction to look this way if you only have it on the center dash. This is a distraction if the content information does not match in the center console with the display. Okay. So really what we're really looking at is, just really quickly, is that, so here's me at DEF CON, and this is just a slide to tell you how good we at car security, or automotive security. We've hired some of the best experts in the world. We actually won DEF CON's Car Hack Village 2 years in a row already. So we can say that we're really good at car security. But of course, there's always people better than you out there. So if you're interested in working with us, we love talking to third-party security researchers. Please reach out to us. Okay. And then, of course, again, experience at Byton.com if you're interested in sharing or working with Byton, help us develop our future operation. And of course, better driving becomes better living is one of our taglines. So thank you very much.